Okay, welcome back to the second part of this hierarchy video. And so as you can see that, oops, this is the same thing that we're continuing with respect to how you can look at hierarchy. Now see, let us look at another aspect of how the hierarchy is built. Now you know that there is some kind of a implicit knowledge in our mental structure that gives you the idea about the grammaticality or the acceptability of a particular sentence that you utter. So say for example, you can say, I am going to school, but you cannot say, I going school to am. Uh, so it's all jumbled. So people will laugh at me if I say that. So what makes you think that I am going to school is a correct one, and school going am I, or whatever other combination is there, order is there, is not acceptable or is wrong? So that basically is part of your competence of a particular language. So you have a kind of a implicit or tacit knowledge that can give you the idea of how it is structured, how this entire language should work. So building on that is a particular hierarchical system. So there are certain things that you can do and certain things that you cannot do. You cannot obviously put verbs in the place of its nouns. So it would be very, very funny to look at that. So the rule that is operative cannot be defined as a particular string if you replace the word classes, if elements from a different word class. Say, for example, you need a two-dimensional representation of a sentence in a particular format that allow you to have a kind of a mental representation of language that is not performed on the kind of a linear string that you were talking about. So we were talking about the linearity. So you see that we were talking about the hierarchical systems. So here you combine them into something over here, and then you combine them together into something which is another one. So this is basically another kind of a hierarchy. So here a particular order is followed. If you make it, say for example, 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, it's going to go wrong. Or even if you say 4, 5 combined, and then you say 1, 2, 3, that order also may be wrong. So how do we respond to this? We we start at the beginning. So let's before we get to there, let's establish certain facts and ideas that what these foundational notions and definitions are all about. You must make sure that you study my previous video, you listen to my previous videos to come to understand what these definitions are and how they are particularly useful in terms of how to conceptualize the hierarchy of language. So a language is basically hierarchically organized in a particular sentence, and we want to understand how these words are organized in that particular setup. So let's start with a kind of a hypothesis. Let's have the first hypothesis as a sentence is a collection of words. Okay, so how do I do this? So let me rub this off. So my first hypothesis is that sentence is a set of words or a collection of words. So let me write this down. So this is my hypothesis. So if I'm looking at a scientific way of understanding this, we would look at how we can falsify this hypothesis. What can we do to set this first hypothesis as false? There is no place for the significance of word order in this hypothesis, and yet we know from our previous example that the word order is extremely significant in terms of how the meaning will be construed. It can change the meaning of a sentence entirely. Say, for example, I say, the tiger killed the deer versus the deer killed the tiger. And also, the jumbling of the words, if you make the words jumbled, they also disturb or destroy the grammaticality or the acceptability of the sentence. So all the three of them are correct, that we can destroy the hypothesis by falsifying it by these mechanisms. It means that we all have the same words, but different meanings of grammaticality or different meanings of the status of how it is perceived. So therefore, this first hypothesis cannot be correct. So let us come to the second one. So instead of saying that it's a collection of words, so suppose I say the sentence is an organized collection of words. So here you can see that it's an ordered mechanism, and the second hypothesis, now it becomes a hypothesis 2. So the second one can capture the fact that that these two sentences are different. So obviously, if you change the positions of these words, they get a change to the meaning. They also capture the fact that is an ungrammatical sentence. Now, what does this tell us? That when we say it's an organized or ordered set of words or ordered collection of words, this becomes a truth. There's an argument against the second hypothesis as well. So some people have said that this does not capture the intuition that not all the substrings of a sentence are created equal. What does that mean? It means that when you have a particular sentence in the words regarded in a particular order, then it must follow a certain hierarchical pattern in order for it to make sense. So there's a test that can be utilized, which kind of tells us about how some substrings can help us understand what is the hierarchical nature of this particular set of rules. So what is such a substring? So these substrings are collections of words that you can form with respect to a particular sentence. So suppose I take the first sentence itself. So I'll not use this one. So let us use the first sentence itself, and let us see how they can be structured. So you have deer, you can have the deer, then you can have killed the deer, then you can have tiger, and then you have the tiger, and then you can have the tiger killed the deer. So obviously there is a kind of a nesting that is available. So you can have the deer combination here, but you cannot obviously have killed the as a kind of a substring constituent which will obey this kind of a bracketing mechanism. So these substrings that are allowed, they are called constituents, and when they are put together in a kind of a framework where two of them are adjacent to each other, they are called immediate constituents. Now these go on to show how these substrings also obey certain kind of a hierarchical structure. Now these substrings consist of words that belong to a particular section more than others, and that is, some substrings are more cohesive than others. So this cohesiveness becomes one of the parameters of the hierarchical pattern to be understood in a proper format. And we just don't have to rely on our intuitions. We know certain things about this cohesiveness where we can identify the cohesive patterns and the non-cohesive patterns, what are constituents, what are immediate constituents, what are these constraints that may be put on the kind of combinations that you put in the bracketing mechanism. So these are all available to us as a kind of a judgment that a native speaker or person who has the ability to understand a particular language, say for example in this case it's English, so you can have people who have this ingrained inbuilt mechanism by which it is done for particular in particular for English in this particular case. Now there are tests that distinguish these cohesive or non-cohesive ones. What are they? So they are substitution, movement, and fragments. So let's look at them one by one. So what is substitution? Suppose I have, let us say,